Today marks a significant moment in trade policy, as President Donald Trump is scheduled to detail new tariffs at a White House event. The announcement follows a period of considerable build-up from the administration and palpable public anticipation regarding the scope and impact of these measures. Framed by the president himself as occurring on Liberation Day, the administration describes the tariffs as reciprocal, designed to bolster U.S. manufacturing capacity and counteract what are termed years of unfair trade practices by other nations. Notably, these actions are directed broadly, impacting both traditional allies and other global partners, friend and foe alike, according to the context provided. This policy direction stands in contrast to prevailing economic analyses, which highlight potential risks including economic downturns and significant strain on long-standing international alliances. The specific details of this initiative, expected at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, carry substantial weight for global economic interactions. The decision to apply these economic measures universally, without apparent distinction between strategic partners and competitors, represents a significant operational shift. It departs from practices where trade policies often reinforced existing political and security alignments. Implementing tariffs as the chosen mechanism introduces direct friction into international commerce. Tariffs inherently function by altering the cost structure of imported goods, leading predictably to responses from affected economies. This action sets in motion a chain of economic adjustments, both domestically and internationally. A notable divergence emerges between the administration's articulated aims, stimulating domestic production and addressing perceived trade imbalances, and the consensus view found in external economic assessments. These analyses point towards considerable risks, including potential negative impacts on overall economic activity and the erosion of established international partnerships built over decades. The preceding week saw deliberate communication efforts from the White House, creating an atmosphere of expectation and, as noted, public anxiety. This preparatory phase served to signal the impending policy shift, allowing various actors, domestic and international, to begin anticipating its consequences. The designation Liberation Day, attached to the announcement, further shapes the narrative surrounding this policy deployment. Therefore, the action scheduled for this afternoon is not merely a declaration of new taxes on imports. It carries the potential to reconfigure established patterns of global trade and challenge existing diplomatic frameworks. The effects ripple outward from the specific economic intervention to touch upon the broader strategic landscape. While the administration positions these tariffs as a necessary corrective measure to rebalance trade dynamics and invigorate domestic industry, this perspective faces significant counterassessment. Economic analyses referenced widely anticipate outcomes substantially different from the stated objectives. Instead of solely bolstering manufacturing, these analyses project a risk of broader economic contraction, suggesting the tariffs could initiate negative feedback loops within the economy. Furthermore, the application of these measures to allied nations introduces a complex dynamic. Applying economic pressure uniformly, irrespective of established political or security relationships, potentially undermines the very foundation of those alliances, which often rely on preferential economic ties alongside strategic cooperation. The designation Liberation Day, with its connotations of restorative action, stands in stark contrast to the reported public anxiety and the warnings from economic circles about potential instability. This highlights a fundamental disagreement on the likely consequences of the policy, one view emphasizing rectification and national benefit, the other focusing on disruption and potential harm. Thus, the policy unfolds against a backdrop of conflicting interpretations regarding its ultimate effects, pitting the administration's stated goals against widespread external forecasts of economic and diplomatic strain. This divergence underscores the contested nature of using broad tariffs as a tool for achieving specific national economic objectives in a deeply interconnected global system. Delving further into the operational dynamics, the strategy of applying identical tariff measures across such a diverse spectrum of nations, encompassing established allies and designated economic rivals, presents inherent complexities. This approach effectively overrides differentiated bilateral relationships, treating international partners primarily as interchangeable economic units within a trade balance equation. Such a move necessitates a recalculation for nations accustomed to preferential economic treatment tied to security partnerships. It forces a potential decoupling of economic interests from long-standing strategic alignments, introducing friction where interdependence was previously fostered. The justification centered on punishing unfair trade practices becomes operationally complex when applied uniformly. Defining and proving unfairness equitably across vastly different economic systems and historical relationships is challenging. Allies, in particular, may contest the premise that their trade conduct warrants inclusion in such punitive measures alongside nations explicitly identified as strategic competitors. This broad application raises questions about the precise calibration of the policy instrument, tariffs, to achieve the stated specific goal of penalizing particular unfair practices. Tariffs, by nature, have diffuse effects, impacting various sectors and potentially triggering countermeasures that extend beyond the initial scope intended by the initiating party. The economic pressure, therefore, risks generating unintended strategic consequences, compelling affected nations, allies included, to reassess their own trade policies and international positioning not just economically, but potentially politically as well. The situation points towards a period of significant adjustment and potential realignment within the international system. Looking beyond the immediate economic adjustments, the implementation of these tariffs signals a potential reorientation of the United States' fundamental approach to international economic engagement. Moving away from negotiated multilateral frameworks or alliance-based preferential systems towards a more unilateral, transactional model appears to be underway, judging by the universality of the measures targeting friend and foe alike. This strategic shift inherently injects a greater degree of uncertainty into the global economic order. The divergence between the administration's optimistic framing and the cautionary forecasts from economists creates ambiguity for international markets and trading partners, potentially hindering investment and complicating long-term planning. The impact on established alliances extends further than temporary economic friction. Subjecting long-standing partners to the same punitive measures as strategic adversaries challenges the underlying assumptions of mutual benefit and shared interest that typically underpin such relationships, potentially leading to a durable weakening of those ties. Moreover, the inherent nature of tariff imposition invites reciprocal actions. When one nation raises trade barriers, particularly under a banner described as reciprocal, affected nations are highly likely to respond in kind, setting the stage for escalating trade disputes that could prove difficult to contain or resolve quickly. The cumulative effect points towards a potentially more fragmented and contentious international trade environment, moving away from the integrated system that has largely characterized recent decades. The full extent of these strategic realignments will unfold based on the precise details announced and the subsequent reactions from the global community. Therefore, the impending announcement represents more than a shift in tariff schedules. It embodies a potential inflection point in how the United States engages economically with the rest of the world. The decision to employ these measures without differentiating between long-term allies and strategic competitors introduces a significant new variable into international relations, directly challenging established economic and political partnerships. Consequently, the global system now faces a period characterized by heightened economic friction and diplomatic uncertainty, stemming from this departure from prior operational norms. The ramifications, as assessed from multiple perspectives, extend beyond trade balances, touching upon the durability of alliances and the predictability of international commerce itself. The observable facts point towards a deliberate alteration of existing dynamics, the full consequences of which will become apparent as nations respond to this action. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, and be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more geopolitical insights like this. I love hearing your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let's keep the conversation going. Share this video with anyone interested in deeper perspectives on current events. Until next time, stay informed and think critically. Thank you.